alone will help to bring harmony and peace to mankind.
Sir. Sir.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to this unique platform of MIT ADT University to discuss about art therapy.
Sir, please unmute yourself. Sir.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to this unique platform of MIT ADT University to discuss about art therapy. Art, no matter whether you choose to create it or simply observe it, it is relaxing and inspiring activity of many people. Disciplines of art and psychology go hand in hand. The application of visual arts is a therapeutic context, helps boost self-esteem and helps provide a safe space. Therefore, art therapy has its roots in the idea that creative expression can foster healing, mental well-being, eliminate emotional blockages, and learn to communicate with yourself and others. In collaboration with American art therapists and practitioners, MIT School of Fine Arts and Applied Art introduces the subject of art therapy and will be offering a certificate program with a well-structured coursework in art therapy. The goal of art therapy is to utilize the creative process and find new ways to gain insight and benefits of artistic expression. People of all groups and various backgrounds are welcome to this practice in art therapy course. We will begin our program with MIT tradition, that is, we will start our program with World Peace Prayer.
प्रतिपाद्या जय जय स्वसंवेद्या आत्मरूपा देवातुति गणेषु सकलार्थमति प्रकाशु म्हणे निवृत्तिदासु अवधारि बोधि गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। पूर्णमदः पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Yes, we will begin this session with the blessings of Honorable Founding President Professor Dr. Vishwanath Karad sir, and with the permission of our beloved and source of motivation, President of MITS and Executive President of MIT Art, Design and Technology University, Honorable Professor Dr. Mangesh Karad sir, I would like to begin this program. I welcome Honorable President, Vice President of MITS and Executive Director of MIT Art, Design and Technology University, Mrs. Jyoti Dakne ma'am. Welcome ma'am, who is the source of inspiration of our school. Basically, she is an engineer, but by heart, she is an artist and a music lover. With her continuous motivation and support, we are progressing leaps and bounds. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me?
We have eminent personalities with us and practicing and developing art therapy course. So I'll introduce all the speakers one by one. So before that, I would request our Honorable Executive President, Executive Director, ma'am, to say a few words.
Good morning, all, to those who are participating from US, and good evening to all our Indian participants of this webinar. I welcome you all on this digital platform on behalf of MIT ADT University. There is one MIT in US, which is a top institute in the world, but there is another MIT in India, which is a leading institute in all technical fields, and now in the field of art as well, with newly started fine arts and music curriculum. And I have a full faith that MIT will create its benchmark on the world map with the huge and magnificent creation of World Peace Dome by our founder president, a great visionary, Dr. V.D. Karad sir. In this field of art, which is going to be a need for whole of the world, Honorable Karad sir actually is a dedicated teacher who built this best institute in the field of engineering, medical and all other technical fields, but he is a born architect and art lover. And all these qualities of his pushed him in the creation of world's biggest dome, Sant Jnaneshwara World Peace Dome, which has created a world record, being world's biggest dome with its highest diameter and its very much needed message for the future generation, a world peace. Now the world is talking about art therapy and all other peace related things, but I must say India and Indian culture originally the pioneer of this peace message. Technology has taken us to Moon and Mars, but it took away our peace of life. Many of us are facing depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. In spite of all luxuries, what's going wrong? We all are facing these kind of questions. So everyone is in search of this inner peace. And I find along with Adhyatma, art therapy will bring inner harmony. And obviously a world will live in peace and harmony. I think art word itself consists of very important, meaningful words. A for Adhyatma, R for remedy, T for transformation. Adhyatma is actually a part of literature only which shows the path for an art of living, which will be a remedy for a good transformation in your life. You see everywhere, whenever you are reading a book or sketching, painting, or drawing something, or you're putting a rangoli in Indian culture, we put it, or writing something in a calligraphic font, we engrossed in that phase so much deep into, we forget the world. So I thank all the dignitaries who all are experts and already working in this art therapy. I will not take individual names, but Dr. Milind Dhoble will introduce everybody, and I know you all are great personalities, and definitely their guidance will help MIT's Fine Arts School to take to their best in this field under the able leadership of our Executive President, Dr. Mangesh Karad, and myself, Jyoti Karad Dhakne, as Executive Director for School of Fine Arts. I thank you all, and be a support system in future for this, our new curriculum, which we are going to start, art therapy in fine arts. So thank you all, and all students will be definitely benefited with your able guidance. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
I will not take much time, because there are many experts, and all students are waiting for their guidance. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam, for your kind support and valuable time spared for us. And definitely, we will see that this discussion will help our students to boost their thirst of art. So today evening, we have eminent personalities like Susan Anand. Susan serves as a director on board of American Art Therapy Association and is active in her state as a member of an advisory council that oversees regulations for licensed art therapists. She helped to establish the Indian Art Therapy Advisory Council and has taught courses and conducted many workshops on art therapy throughout India. She is on faculty in the development of Department of Psychiatry and Human Behavior at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. Welcome, Susan, to this program. We have second panelist, Sangeeta Prasad. She has over 30 years of experience working as an art therapist with children and adults and is currently in private practice. She is the co-founder of Circle Art Studio in Virginia, USA, and vice president of Prasad Family Foundation. She founded the Indian Art Therapy Discussion Forum, IATDF, in 2015 and teaches an online course on art therapy. Welcome, Sangeeta ma'am.
Welcome. Welcome.
We have third panelist, Smita Raje Deshpande ma'am. She is well known to all of us. She is our visiting faculty. She is a graphic designer, visual artist, art history and aesthetic teacher, founder of Art Lane, and is a curator of Kalagoshti. She is an art-based therapy practitioner, World Center of Creative Learning, Pune. She has volunteered as an ABT practitioner at Adult Mental Health Center at Arlington, USA, and did bedside ABT at Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital, Pune. For the Pediatric Center Cancer Ward, she has worked with special children at Prism Foundation, Pune. Welcome, Smita ma'am. We have Manisha Khanna. She is an accomplished artist with over 51 art shows and practitioner art-based therapist. Manisha holds a master's degree in social art and a PG diploma in expressive art therapy. She has certification in pranic healing. She provides consultancy services to various NGOs and she has designed and conducted workshops for several NGOs and corporates. We have Aishwarya Iyer. He is an art therapy professional working in Michigan, USA. He has an MA in clinical psychology, as well as she has done her MA in art therapy. Since 2017, Aishwarya has been working as the art experience and art studio that provides community art and art therapy services in Michigan. Personal art practice is heavily inspired by traditional Indian arts and crafts. So welcome all the honorable panel member to this open platform of MIT Art Design and Technology University and MIT School of Fine Arts and Applied Arts. Now I request all the panel members to start their panel discussion and help our students to understand what is art therapy. So if you wish, you can share your screen and then we can see your PowerPoint presentation for better understanding and communication. Thank you.
Yes, I would like to request Susan ma'am, you can start.
Susan ma'am, please come forward to explain the slides.
Okay, so this, I'm Susan Anand, and good evening to everyone. I will be starting the segment at the beginning of our presentation, and then we'll move through to the other speakers. So if we can go back to the slides, to that first slide. And I want to just say that we are so honored to have this opportunity to present this information to all of you this evening. And I would like to give special thanks to Dr. Millen and also Mrs. Joyce Imam for being here and helping to organize this, and also to Smita for all of her work in organizing this webinar. Next. So I would like to begin the webinar with just a little bit about the history and growth of the profession of art therapy. Next slide. The profession of art therapy is relatively new, but the roots are ancient and universal. Prehistoric people drew on cave walls before there was organized language, serving purposes of communication. Artists all over the world have worked with imagery to tell stories, perform rituals, communicate, and protect communities. The use of symbolic expression for healing has included ritual decoration of the body, costumes, masks, props, imagery in the sanctuary or in sacred spaces. In southwestern France, there are the cave paintings in Lascaux that date back to 15,000 BC. They serve as an example of imagery created by Paleolithic humans and are an example of the human capacity to interpret and give meaning to their surroundings. Next slide. India, my husband's home country, and now my country through my marriage to him, is rich with examples of imagery used in culture and religion. On the left is a picture of a Buddhist monk who traveled to the United States and created a sand mandala during a conference for the American Art Therapy Association a few years ago. And on the right is a photograph of the goddess Durga during the Durga Puja. Next, please. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, psychiatrists became interested in the spontaneous artwork of their patients. And they found that the art was aesthetically pleasing and offered possibilities for understanding a patient's thoughts and feelings. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung were just two psychoanalysts who looked at their patients' dream interpretation as a way to access the unconscious through symbolic imagery. Next, please. There have also been studies by other psychiatrists who are listed here. There's a wonderful collection of artwork by patients called the Prinzhorn Collection that's available in Heidelberg. And there has been since this time a interdisciplinary exchange between psychiatrists, art historians, and art therapists now around the world. And some of the early fascination at this time led to psychiatry's interest in having their patients create art. Next, please. Then we also have the children's education movements that first took place in Europe and then spread to the United States. These were inspired by kindergarten in Germany and the Montessori schools in Italy. From these, educators discovered that children's artwork reflected not only their physical growth, but also their emotional and their intellectual growth as well. One art educator that art therapists have studied is Victor Lowenfeld, who worked initially with blind, but then later with many other children, and developed a theory of stages that children go through in their artwork. And this is found in his book, Creative and Mental Growth. Next, please. So around the 1930s and 1940s, actually during the time of World War II, art therapy began to emerge in the UK. One of the first people to use art in healing was Adrian Hill, who coined the term art therapy in 1942. He was an artist and he developed tuberculosis. And so while at a sanatorium, he began using art for his own healing. And then as soldiers returned home from the war, he worked with them as well to use art as a form of healing. Adrian Hill, or Edward Adamson, also worked with the mental health hospitals, and he studied the connection between the artistic expression and emotional release. He was the first artist employed by the National Health Service. In 1962, the British Association of Art Therapists was founded. Next, please. About the same time, art therapy began emerging and developing in the United States. These are the three key pioneers at that time. Margaret Naumburg, who was a psychoanalyst, used art as a tool to reveal the unconscious or symbolic speech of her patients. Eleanor Ullman worked with Dr. Bernard Levy and helped to establish a program at George Washington University. And it was a collaboration between psychiatry and art therapy. So one of the first times that art therapy was actually introduced in an educational platform. Edith Kramer, who identified first as an artist, was also someone who had gone through psychoanalysis and worked with Friedel Dieker Brandeis in Europe during World War II at the time of the Holocaust, escaped to the United States and was able to begin working on the theory of art therapy as she worked with children in the United States. Edith Kramer was influenced by Lowenfeld as well, one of the art educators, and believed that art itself was a form of therapy. She later helped to develop the program at New York University, where I later became a student and was trained under her. Next, please. In the 1950s, hospitals began using art therapy along with traditional talk therapies. And they found that art making was a way to enhance recovery, health, and wellness in patients. Next, please. So from that point, we have developed art therapy educational programs in the United States, as well as in other parts of the world. In the United States, we have the American Art Therapy Association, which began approving programs in the 1970s. And that has grown now to many programs across the United States. We now are using an outside accreditation organization to accredit our programs. And at this point, we have 14 of those programs accredited through KHAP. And we're hoping that the rest of the programs will continue to be accredited as well. Currently, there are 7,000 art therapists who work in the United States, and we now are seeing global expansion of the profession. Next, please. In the United States, when an art therapist is educated and has gone through the training, they can receive credentials. So most people who enter the field enter as an artist or as a psychologist, and then they both have the training in both sides of the field. They can become a counselor as well as an art therapist. Most receive a master's. In order to enter the field, you have to have a master's and or doctorate. And there are clinical internships that are completed during the educational period. After a person receives their education, they can then move into working on credentials, which are granted through the Art Therapy Credentials Board in the US. And during this time are supervised through those who are already credentialed. And then in some states, we also have licensure for professional art therapists, but that's by state. Next, please. And finally, there is the global growth of art therapy. We are now seeing membership organizations throughout the world, including North America, South America, Europe, Scandinavia, the Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, Africa, and the Caribbean. There are over 36 countries that have expressive arts associations, and over 30 countries have art therapy associations. There are also several cross-border organizations, and India has recently developed expressive arts therapy associations. So we are here to inform you about art therapy specifically because it is our hope and dream that we will move into educational programs in India for art therapy. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, for your wonderful information about art therapy.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Great information. And your work is indeed a great work.
Thank you. Sangeeta will now present her slide.
Thank you for this opportunity to present to such a wonderful wide audience. I'm really, really grateful to Dr. Jyoti ma'am as well as Dr. Milan sir for giving us this opportunity to present today. And next slide, please. So I will be talking a little bit more about what is art therapy. You heard the history of art therapy, you heard the training required, and our panelists will be talking more about what is art therapy and how we work and the training that we have received. So next slide. So my journey began, I was born and brought up in Chennai, and I studied fine arts at Stella Maris College. And when I was doing my third year college, I wanted to do more with art. I felt this urge inside of me. So I did visual communications as in the evening college. Morning I was studying fine arts, evening visual communication, and I thought I'd get into advertising. But that didn't seem to be something that was really touching my heart or my passion, and I always loved children. And then I came across this book by Edith Kramer in the US Embassy, where I used to go and try to get books. In those days, to find books was very difficult for us in 1980s. So I went there and I found this book on art therapy, and I read it and I was just taken aback. I wanted to study art therapy. So I applied and I came to George Washington University, and I studied art therapy. And I've always had this passion of bringing art therapy back to India. So I came back in 1987, I worked in India, And I found that people were very receptive to art therapy. But then, as we get married, came back to the United States, and I couldn't go back as planned. I would go back and do workshops, trainings, try different ways of bringing art therapy to India, and slowly but surely, it has taken root in India. A lot of people are interested in art therapy, expressive arts therapy, art space therapy. So there's just a lot of interest in it. And through this process, now we are teaching a course at Women's Christian College also. And now we are hoping that MIT will create its certificate course. So this is part of my journey. Here I've worked in schools, I've worked in mental hospitals, inpatient psychiatry, and now I have my private practice. So I hope to bring this passion that I have and share it with all of you. Next slide, please. So do we think in images, words, sounds? How do we think, right? So one of the things is that we think verbally and visually go hand in hand. So using this, so a lot of times therapy is thought about as verbal, but sometimes words are just not enough to say what we are saying, especially with children, with adults, with trauma. When we are traumatized, we may feel it in our body, we feel it but we don't have the words to express it. And so that's why Edith Kramer, who had gone through the Holocaust and then come to United States, she knew what that felt like. People in the psychiatric hospitals realized there was something more that was able to help them express what they were going through. In our own culture, we see that, right? With our expressions of religion, it's not enough to only say the words. We have it in our temples. We have beautiful architecture, beautiful sculpture to express what they felt that was needed to express their feelings, their thoughts about what was going on. So, and now a lot more research is being done on where in the brain is these faculties and how they are connected, how the visual and the verbal are connected, and also how does it really help us in our own healing process? How does it help us with reducing our anxiety, our stress, depression? So many ways we are finding ways that art is helpful in healing. Next. So we're going to do a little visualization. This is, I would ask the participants to please feel free to participate. We're going to use the chat box also. So get ready to be on chat. So I'm going to ask you to kind of get comfortable. Maybe if you'd like to, you can even close your eyes. And I'm also going to ask you to visualize a flower. Just visualize any flower. Think of the color of the flower, the shape of the flower. Think of a memory associated with this flower. And as you begin to imagine this flower, the memory, imagine maybe how you feel in your body. And just now taking a deep breath, open your eyes. You've closed it. And this is the power of imagination, right? Now I'd like you to write down what flower you saw, just put it in the chat, and we'll see how many people saw what flower. I just mentioned a flower. So write down what flower did you visualize? And let's see. So we got rose, hibiscus, white rose, sunflower, mother sunflower, red rose, lotus, sunflower, jasmine. Yes, so many. And look at the pattern that's emerging. So as you begin to a daisy, so there are many, many different, and we can see that not everybody saw just a rose, right? So it's a personal, very, very personal association. Now you can think about the color you saw of this flower. And if you can write down the colors that you saw. White, red, yellow. So there are many different colors, brown, pink, shades of yellow, and our imagination starts blooming, right? Literally, like we can see those images. So that's the part of the brain. Even though I am using words, the brain is now beginning to think. So you're stimulating that part of your brain. Now, if you can just give me a few words to describe a memory that came up. It could be maybe I remembered the last time I was in a garden, or whatever memory came up, my sister's wedding, or any place, or you can just type in just in a few words a memory. So my summer vacation, a smell, very good painting, my garden on a rainy day, walking, so going so fast, wow, yellow rose plants planted. So if I didn't read it, you all are reading it, a gift. So here is a memory that was stimulated. So this is the reason we did this is for you to understand the potential of the brain to connect a verbal with a visual, and that's what we use in the therapeutic process. So whether it's a child, or it is an adult, or it's a senior person, we can use this visualization to bring about healing, to bring about expression, self-expression. We can bring about understanding our needs, what may be a need there that we have, a connection. So when we do it in a group, maybe several people saw different kinds of flowers and they share it with each other. There's a sense of connection. And so there are so many things that we can understand through this visual expression. Next. So I'd like to talk now about the tree of art. This is something that I had kind of conceived as the process of art making, right? And it's in my book too, Creative Expression, Say It With Art. So the foundation of art is the knowledge of art we may have, the exposure of creating art, the emotions, the life experiences, as you saw in this experiential, the existing knowledge of art materials and ideas, basic skills, past and current environment, family background, all this influences our thinking, right? And our experiences. And then is the expression, the trunk. And I think there's one branch that goes into, when we go into studying it, is art education, where we study what is art, how did artists draw, or how do we appreciate art. These are some things that we study in art education. And in art therapy, we use it more as a process of self-expression. We may use it to gain fine motor and gross motor skills. So there are many different ways we can use it. So the process is really important in the art. In art making, right? The process of making. And then the product is there. So the products can be right from chaos, where we see where it's all over, maybe like a Jackson Pollock painting where he splash paint, or it can be completely completed with lots of details, as we see in self-expression paintings, decorative paintings, in religion, in representational paintings, in functional paintings, in advertisement. There's so many ways art, the product of art is there. And in art therapy, for us, process as well as product can be important. It depends on the goals that we have. Next. So what's the difference between art therapy and an art class? So in an art therapy, it is facilitated by a professional person, an art therapist. As Susan mentioned, that we have special training in psychology, counseling, and then we have also training in the art, right? Whereas in art class, we would have more of the instructor teaching you the technique, teaching you what you have to do, teaching you art appreciation, teaching you the history of art. The other thing is in art therapy, it's the relationship that's really important. The therapeutic relationship, either whether it's one-on-one or in a group or in a community setting. With the art class, it's the student-teacher relationship. The teacher teaches, the student is learning. In art therapy, it fosters, we work on safety, confidentiality is very important. So that's why Susan said, let's not take photographs of the slides because the artwork is confidential. It belongs to that person and we have got permission to use it for educational purposes. In an art studio, you would be proud to put up your artwork. You want to put it up there. It's a means of communication. Of course, if the person wants to, in art therapy, want to put up their artwork, or if that is the goal, we would also do that. The main goal is self-expression. The main goal is to learn something in art class. The art supplies are used as tools for self-expression. The art supplies are used in specific ways to accomplish a task. So there's no right or wrong way in an art therapy. We always say there's no right or wrong when we're doing an art therapy session. Whereas in art class, you will have certain ways that you need to accomplish a particular project or you need to build a particular skill. The focus in art therapy a lot of times is on the process. That's why we work with children with various disabilities and abilities. We help them to feel that sense of accomplishment. In an art class, the product is very important. We are working towards the art product. In an art therapy session, the emphasis on self-reflection or expression and communication. Artwork is evaluated for its formal qualities based on the elements and principles of design in an art class. So this is the difference between art therapy and art class. Next slide. So art therapy combines three big fields. If you look at it as there's the art field, and then there's the education field, that is where we learn different things, and then the psychology, learning about the human brain and the way we behave, right? So when we combine education and psychology, we can do special education where we can work with people with different abilities. We combine art and education, becomes art education, and art and psychology is psychology. But when we combine all three, it is art therapy. So we really are combining the three different fields into one. Next. So where is art therapy used? So art therapy is used in medical facilities, in psychiatric hospitals and clinics. Susan Anand works with in Mississippi in a medical hospital, and she works on the oncology unit. So we can work with cancer patients, adults and children. We can work we've worked with AIDS patients, we worked with stroke victims in many, many different settings in a hospital. I myself worked in a psychiatric hospital inpatient with children and adults, schools with children of various abilities and needs. So special education schools with children having emotional problems, or sometimes even in a regular school, and our therapist may be brought in to do a group to help them resolve some issue that is going on in private counseling. That is where I'm working now, private practice. Sorry, I repeated myself. The medical settings, oncology, burns victims, We had somebody in India, Bani Malhotra, who worked on a burns unit, which is very, very much actually something that you'll find in India a lot more, maybe. I've always thought there's a lot of things being done with widows in India. That would be a wonderful place to bring art therapy so that they can find some self-expression. Stroke rehab units, outpatient treatment facilities, prisons. I think it's already beginning in India where a lot of people are using art in prisons. So that's another place. Senior centers. With seniors, it can be in a community center, it can be in senior citizen homes where we can bring arts there. Community projects. A lot of people are bringing art as a community project. Lately, there's an initiative to bring it into the parks in the United States. So people, when they come to the park, they can also do art. Many more settings there are that can be used. And in India, you will hear from Manisha, Smita, how they have been using art also in various settings. Next. So need for training, and that's where we are going to be focusing our attention to, and this webinar is about that. What kind of training is best for India? That's one of the big questions we will be asking as we design this program. How can we make the training relevant for our community? For instance, in India, when I work, paper is very expensive, and also space is a premium. So while here we can use big sheets of paper, in India, we are very careful with what we use, and we need smaller sheets of paper. So we want to make our training relevant for the country that we are building this training program. How do we integrate the knowledge and research that has been done in other countries to create a program that will work in India? That will be our main focus. It has to be relevant for the Indian setting. For India, should we have different levels of training? That's a question that I've been really thinking about, because we want to make it affordable, we want to make it relevant, we want to make it that it is not only for some people who could afford to do the training, right? So is there different levels in India? I feel that I had the privilege to come and study in America. Not everybody has that privilege. Many people have the privilege of studying at MIT, but maybe many people don't have the privilege of doing a master's program. So how do we give levels of training that we can provide the best training for people there? And this is a question that we are really exploring. I don't have the answer yet, but we are exploring. How can we make the training affordable? That's a question that we will really have to work with through scholarships, through. I could not have studied at GW with what my parents afford. They gave me a scholarship, they gave me a job, I worked hard in that program so that I could get a free course, right? How do we make it affordable so students of different backgrounds can attend the program? So that's something also that we will be looking at. So with that, I really thank you again for this opportunity, and people, if they have questions, please hold on to it, and we'll have a question answer time at the end to answer some questions. Next, I would like to introduce Smita for our next speaker.
Thank you, Sangeeta ma'am. Indeed, your guidance was really good. Like, it was completely, you understand the problems of India first, and according to that, you suggested the things. But nowadays in India also, many things are changing. Like, not everybody wants to put their kids for engineering, medical, or like money-making fields, you can say.
Right.
Yes, everybody is now thinking about a child's psychology. He is interested in art, so why not to put him for that side? And definitely there is I must say, it's a good future for art. In new education trend will come in India, and it's already started, I think.
Yes. my mother ran a school for almost 50 years. So I come from the background and I can see the difference, right? In 1985, there was not one special ed school in Chennai when I left. Now when I return, there are many special education schools, there are many dyslexia therapists, there are many other therapists. There's so much more going on. So it's fantastic to see that. So
yeah, for this new generation, these things are going to be must, I think, because a lot of these gadget things and many things are there where kids are diverted from their goals. And now all these kind of art therapy, this is a new word which world is looking for the kids to involve. Like in this pandemic situation as well, I think now this is a different topic, that online schools. Do we really need online school for 4 or 5 months? Let the kids skip their school for a few days. It doesn't matter. Let them play with colors, let them play with music or something else that for 3 4 months they can do. But everybody, all parents and teachers, everybody is so panicked. My goodness, the 4 5 months schools are not opened, and all students are stuck with that computers, mobiles, and this is, I think, so somewhere we have destroyed the mindset of students, that mobile's necessity. And I don't know the situation in US, but in India it is, I must say, it is horrible. It's whatever. Like for college students, it's okay, but for school students, it was not really needed, I think. This is what my opinion is. I'm working in the education field, but for higher education, yeah, students are about 16 years old. They can understand the proper use of gadgets, but for schools, students, it is really a horrible situation, whatever I'm facing with my son as well. So I can understand the situation. Yeah, so you people are more into this field, so I think you can guide more.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Smita ma'am.
Yeah. So I begin with a big thank you for MIT and Milind sir and Jyoti ma'am for giving us this wonderful opportunity. Yeah. And so I begin with my small introduction. So I am basically an artist, graphic designer from MSU and Abhinav. And I did my course in 2009. At that time, like, people had not heard about art therapy in India. So, and the activities that I used to do were like very amusing to many people. And but then after I came back from the US in 2015, yes, people had started knowing the word art therapy, and now I see there's a lot of awareness about it. And yeah, so back then I also practiced at Mangeshkar bedside art-based therapy with the cancer pediatric ward. And I also have worked in special schools, and I have done workshops, numerous workshops for normal people. So now let me tell you, how did I get into it? So I have been a teacher all my life, and I have taught in all other schools, like the residential schools, the day schools, the Mani school, Silhangat school. And then I came across this opportunity of working with a private institute which taught the municipal school students. So here, when I started teaching, I realized that these students were little different than the other school students in a way where their fights were different, their conflicts were different. And I realized that they have something inside them, buried inside them, which needs to come out. And anyway, I was interested in being an art teacher. And yes, being an art teacher, you also have to teach science and sometimes, social science and things like that. So in all the classes, I realized that there is a need for these students where, through something else, not through the studies, but through something else, they could be helped. And I had read a book called How to Know Your Child Through Art. I don't remember the author. since then I was interested in this kind of a thing, and I fortunately came across WCCL, which ran this course of art-based therapy, and I literally had to fight with him, my mentor, saying that no, I need to do this course for my children who are otherwise normal. Outwardly they are normal, they are not labeled by any mental illness or anything, any disability as such, but they need help. And I did this 9-month course, and during that 9 months course I then did this project called Impact of Art-Based Therapy on Social and Emotional Behavior of the Underprivileged Children. So this was a school in Pune, and this was a 9-month course. So I started doing this evidence-based therapy with them, and during this 9 months course I did a lot of data collection, and I used a lot of assessment tools and standardized tests, and the results that I got was like amazing. So to tell you the truth, when I started doing the course, in the first few days I thought, how is this jumping around and rolling on the ground and singing songs and playing the djembes is going to help my students? And I, being a teacher, like, it was a little like very difficult for me to let go all these inhibitions and be into it. But as I started doing the project, and as I started collecting the data, and as I started getting the results, oh my god, I was surprised, I was amazed by the results. And all these standardized tests and all, they have a rating scale for you, so you can't be biased there. And the results that I got were amazing. So what we did was that I used to take a test before they started the therapy, in between the period, and then at the end of the therapy, after the therapy was done. So I got the result before, mid, and then post. And that taught me, or that the reflections that I got in those 9 months were, yes, the creative expression helps them evoke their feelings, helps them to talk about it. Maybe they don't even realize that all this was buried inside them, maybe subconscious, on a subconscious level. So the fights that used to happen in the school, all those nail bite, nail scratching things, and horrible things that they used to do in the class, all that subsided slowly and slowly. And what they learned was, the best thing that they learned was to let go. And that was a miracle. And these students that I worked with are now, they have grown up, they have done their college, and they are on their own, and really, they have established themselves. Can we show the slides, please? Next. 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 Yeah. So this is a few. I've just taken a few examples of the standardized tests that I used, or the arts-based assessment tools that I use. So this is a bird's nest drawing. If you see all the 3 drawings, the first drawing, I've just messed up with the sequence. The first middle drawing is the first drawing that the child has done. So the child is asked to draw a bird's nest. That's the only instruction. No other instructions are given. And this test is to see or assess the attachment security, or to access the person's internal representation of the self and others. So if you see the first drawing, the nest is hanging in the air, hanging on the tree. There is no support. It's just there. Then the black and white is the second one, and the colored one is the third one. I'll just go to the next one and explain to you. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So here, if you see, the first drawing is where the feeling of insecurity is there. As you see, there is no parental bird, though the drawings are not very clear, but there are only eggs in it, or maybe small little birds, but not the parental bird. The nest is in a very vulnerable position. It's just hanging in the air. and it is also tilted. The last, after the post, or after all the therapy was done, the drawing that you see is more colorful. There's more green used in it, less of brown is there. And the story, the child had a story that the flood was there, the river was rising. So the bird moved the nest from the below. If you see, there's a small little nest at a very, very low level on the right side of the tree. The right side of the tree has a very small nest very near to the water. So the bird shifts the nest away from the water and also protects the nest from a suspected threat. And the bird also decides that the nest didn't have a parent bird in it. So the bird decides to take care of the nest and the baby in it. So it was a huge change for this child. This child initially was like ready to pounce on anybody who came to talk to her. And later, she had become so friendly and so pleasant that her mother came to the school one day and asked me, "What have you done with this child? That this child has transformed from a very, quarrelsome girl to a very caring girl." I said, "Yes, that is the power of art therapy." Yeah, next, please. Yeah, this is another example of the bird's nest drawing. So again, you see there are only 2 eggs in the nest. There is no parental bird. So this was the first installation that the child had done. And the last one, though there is no parental bird, but the whole scene is there is more green, less of brown. And the story was that the bees are happily building the beehive there, and the leaves and the grass has decided to grow there. Earlier it was just a branch. And why did it decide to grow? The leaves started to grow and the grass started to grow because the birds had made a nest there. So it was a very positive change in this child too. Next, please. Yeah. So those were the bird's nest drawing. Then one of the tools that I used were the fear drawings. So this particular child was very, very scared of dark rooms. He depicted his fear as ghosts, and he was afraid of closed rooms also. He said that behind the closed rooms or in the closed rooms, people commit suicide. He was just in the 5th grade, and he said he has witnessed this, and he feels that whenever a room is closed, people are going to do something horrible behind the doors. Even his clay work shows a very sad face with tears. Later, when the therapy, after the 9 months, I told them a story about I just come back from US, a short visit from US. So there the basements were very dark, cold, stone walled rooms. So I was telling them about this, the story, which about a room in the basement of the house, which is always closed and very dark and very cold. But the post-session drawing of this child, this particular child, the story was very happy. So in the basement, the child was enjoying the art class. And in the art class, if you see, there's a figure with this kind of a hair, that is me. So that was his story. So this child who was afraid of dark and closed rooms had, started to deal and was very happy with it. He didn't even notice that the room was closed and dark and cold. So this is the power of art therapy. Yeah, next. So yeah, so when I did the course at WCCL, that is the World Center for Creative Learning in Pune, I wish that I had mentors like Sangeeta and Susan. And at that time, I had a professional course like you're going to begin at MIT. I really wish I had something like that. I would have, really, benefited more maybe. So yeah, that is my story about my journey and how I entered this. And now I work for all sorts of populations, even for seniors, 50 plus. I especially, work for these women, especially for women, because they are a group where, they're free, their husbands are busy, they have time, the children have grown up, and they don't know what to do. So I try to, get them involved in art activities, and slowly on the side, I keep doing therapeutic activities with them. That's it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, I pass it over to Manisha now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Smita.
Yes.
Your mic, Manisha?
Anisha, unmute yourself.
Greetings and Atma Namaste. Thank you for giving this opportunity to us for presenting and introducing what art therapy is. And thank you, Smita, for organizing it. So I'll start with the slides right away, considering the time. And okay. I have worked with the hospital as the director training on, using art as therapy, Uma Sanjeevani Hospital in Gurgaon. Then I have worked as a visiting faculty with the NGO Muskan, that is the NGO for intellectually disabled children and adults. And I have been working with NGOs, which I love my work over there. And I'm also on the board of Action Center for Transformation NGO. Right now, I'm practicing more independently through my studio, Divine Energies, which is a platform for healing and art therapy, which gives me a lot of opportunities to conduct workshops and reach out to the masses at a broader level. So next slide, please. So when I was contacted by a journalist in 2014, and she asked me, ma'am, how would you describe art therapy? So being a creative person, I always used to look for metaphors. And I said, okay, now how? I started wondering. Then the metaphor which came to my mind was, oh my God, it's like the vacuum cleaner of the mind. It has the capability of sweeping away the negative thoughts and emotions. And we have accumulations. We do accumulate certain emotions, and because of the experiences of our life, certain phobias, low self-esteem, grief, anxiety, these kind of negative emotions, depressive tendencies, traumatic stress energy, pent-up negative energy. So this is how I describe art therapy in my context. It's not anywhere in the books, but this is what the metaphor which came to my mind. Next slide, please. So difference between art and art therapy. I say art is self-expression, but with a focus on the end product, whereas art therapy is a process. We have got a good insight from Sangeeta on this. So going to the pictures which I have here, when we might ask a person to make a tree, so it might look like what is in the first picture, beautiful and colorful and something which is close to perfection. But the second picture is by a participant during one of my workshop, and the directive given was draw yourself as a tree. So in the second picture, it has a lot of things contained in it, which an art therapist can assess. Which as a layman, we might here the students might not understand, but I'm sure Sangeeta and Susan would have quickly assessed what is it reflecting. So Carl Jung saw the tree as a universal symbol of individuation of the self in all its complex physical, emotional, and spiritual facets. Next slide, please. So this is one of the very prominent art therapy work which I did, and I used to visit Srinagar for a good 30 months. I was appointed as the project lead for a sustainable livelihood project in Srinagar by J&K Health Foundation. The goal seemed totally impossible as the women there were not motivated enough and had been diagnosed with PTSD. So I decided to conduct art therapy sessions for the first batch to be able to achieve the goal of creating sustainable livelihood. What I realized with my experience that adopting an approach of designing the session with the cultural sensitivity worked better, because these were the Muslim women and I had to be very mindful of their culture and their beliefs, even to reach out to them, even for breaking the ice, it was a task. So when I joined there were 13 women, the first batch of the 13 women. I conducted the therapeutic sessions with them, and eventually they became the trainers. Because as we say, the glass full cannot be filled more. First, I had to ask them to release their emotions, and I used the therapeutic sessions, helping them to release whatever a negative energy they were holding within. And that is how I was able to give them the motivation to work. And like they also became the trainers. I still feel so touched when I talk about them. And that is how we were able to train from 13 to 960 women in 30 months. The basis was the therapeutic sessions which I conducted with them. Next slide, please. So this is how I used to give them the instructions. This is a kind of a setup what is shown here, because considering their culture and what they believes, I was very careful in giving them the instructions. Next slide. This is the training room at Shaja, JNK Health Foundation. Some of the artwork by them is displayed on the wall. This is how they used to sit in a group and work. Next slide. So this is one of the pre and the post test conducted. It's called the weather person test, which the students will learn during their training. So in the first picture, which was the pre-test, you can assess like it is reflecting the hardships what this person is going through. But in the post-test, after 20 therapeutic sessions, what is reflecting is the hope. And some kind of self-esteem has also been become better. The person is more motivated, and there is definitely enhancement in her coping skills. So art, when used as a healing tool, culminated in efficient development of craft work, their goal, mandalas for centeredness and containment. I incorporated mandala session. Most of you might be aware how mandala activity helps with focus and concentration. Mandalas help with centeredness and containment. These 13 girls who underwent therapeutic sessions and eventually became the trainers learned the effectiveness of mandala creation. Gradually, they introduced mandalas as a form of motif to the badges, thus extending a therapeutic effect. Next slide, please. They first drew the mandala motif on paper and then imbibed it as a craft, which was actually the goal of making them, creating a sustainable livelihood for them, so that they are able to produce the craft work which is even acceptable and beautiful. It can be beautiful only once they are beautiful within. Next slide. So here, using art as therapy for healing, self-discovery, and self-growth. I always believe that art has a great potential for healing, self-discovery, and self-growth. Here I'll share a bit about myself. I didn't want to start with my journey. I've been practicing as a visual artist for over 2 decades, inclusive of the artworks and the art shows at the national, international level, auctioned by Christie's. My art always included a healing and spiritual essence. After I started art sessions, which were requested by some of the admirers who visited my art show, I started observing joy and happiness in my students. During the art sessions, I also started observing what they were going through. In fact, I've been experiencing for these 2 decades the healing aspect of art, but I started observing. So there's one of the lady about 60 years old. She came to my art sessions, and she didn't used to interact with anyone, with the fellow students. She would bring her help along with her. But after a month, I saw a change in her. She started interacting with the fellow students. And again, after another month, say about after 2 months, doctor reduced her medication of anxiety and mild depression. That lady, Mrs. S, had lost her mother recently and her brother, to whom she had donated her kidney. So she was going through insecurity, sense of loss, and trauma. This was something which moved me, and it was like a turning point in my life. I started researching how art works as therapy. So during my research, I came across various programs abroad, and one of the program in Singapore, I did join LaSalle College of the Arts, followed by the Expressive Arts Training in India by WCC. Little did I know that I was being prepared to heal myself by healing others. That was the time I lost a very dear loved one. And soon after I lost my loved one, after about 4 months, I had to go for this project in Kashmir. So this is how it works. Like art as therapy is an intensely powerful healing tool. It helps with the awareness, understanding emotions, enhancing coping skills, enhancing cognitive functions, introspection, personal development, visualization, and meditation. I use a lot of visualization technique, and you've seen how powerful it is when Sangeeta made us, do a small experiential. It has a very calming and meditative effect. Also, having a good grasp on the role of energy centers in a human system, I combine the modalities at time for a better healing process. And just to highlight here, I also am very grateful to the divine for giving me the mentors, especially Sangeeta Prasad, also Susan and Girija, who have always encouraged me to be myself and to be inclusive in my approach to extend healing. I'm really sure that when a program with an inclusive approach and more relevance to our Indian culture is introduced at MIT, it will be quite beneficial, not just for oneself, also as a career. Because with an inclusive approach, one can reach out to the masses at a broader level. And that is my personal experience, because I have been combining the modalities of energy healing and art therapy at times where I wanted quicker results. As such, the new career parameters are emerging with this pandemic with an elaborated need for a holistic approach towards life. And this is one of the artwork of one of my clients. So this is by a boy who has had relationship issues, and he would come to the sessions, dab on the colors, and the colors stated a lot about his emotional state. He wasn't able to move on, and he knew that being in this relationship is not helping him. So one fine day, he picked up a charcoal and he tells me that, no, I want to end this relationship. So after this few sessions, when he has been taking out his emotional outburst on the canvas, I'm calling it outburst or the emotional garbage, whatever you can term it, one fine day he gets the motivation, he gets the hope, he becomes more aware of his emotions, he starts understanding his emotions, and there develops the coping skills. And there's a lot of introspection, which gives him the ability and the capability and the courage to do so. That is one of the artwork I wanted to share. And again, thank you so much for giving us this platform. And now I would like to request Aishwarya to present.
Thank you, Manisha ji. Thank you. Thank you.
And I hope I know we are going over time. I hope it's okay that we are taking longer than we had expected. Just want to be aware. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Milind?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay with the time?
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. All students are attending. No issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Aishwarya.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to be conscious of the time and make sure that
No, don't worry. So, yeah. Don't worry. We have a time span of around 2 hours. Don't worry.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much. So I'm Aishwarya Iyer, and I'm an art therapist in the making. And before I go to my presentation, I wanted to say that I'm really humbled to present on this panel, because my fellow speakers, they're far more senior and far more experienced, and they're more mentors to me. So to be included on this, with them, I'm extremely grateful and humbled. And thank you so much to MIT and Professor Milind and Ma'am Jyoti. So I think this is very promising, and it's really exciting times for art therapy in India with this. So can I go to my slide? Thank you so much. The next one, please. Yeah. So I'm going to just, kind of quickly talk about my journey into art therapy, and my contribution to this presentation is going to be from, the point of view as of someone that came into art therapy with a psychology background. I have a master's in clinical psychology from Pune, in fact. I studied, all my education was in Pune. So I came into art therapy with a psychology background, and I also came into art therapy with really no training in the visual arts. So, oftentimes for people that have not heard of art therapy, or someone that's just, coming to it for the first time, they often say that, I can't draw, drawing is not for me, I'm not an artist. And I was that person. And now I'm, an art therapist in the making. And growing up, I did learn Indian classical dance. I learned Bharatanatyam, and I learned it for quite a few years. So I definitely think that any creative inclination that I have, or the fact that I was, when I chose art therapy, I think my training in Indian classical dance did play a very important role, and, and understanding how important the arts are for the body, mind, and soul. So when I came to the US, I was actually, I'd applied for a social work program. And while I was looking for programs, that's when I came across the art therapy program. I hadn't heard of a profession like art therapy till then. And I was really intrigued, and I started reading up, and there was still, very limited information. This was in 2011, 2012. So, but then when I got into the social work program as well as the art therapy program, but I chose the art therapy program because for me at that point, even though I didn't know much about the profession, there was this insight, there was this feeling, like the pieces of the puzzle, they fit together in terms of, me wanting to be in the mental health field and wanting to work on wellness and, healing and therapy. I didn't know how, but I knew that, it kind of fit together. I knew that the arts and creative expression would be very, very powerful. And that's what made me choose the art therapy program. And so I'm just going to give a quick brief for students that would be interested in knowing, what a program looks like, what really happens in that, and what is kind of training that you get. So I did my master's in art therapy at Wayne State University in Michigan. And so a lot of the courses that we had courses where we spoke about the different approaches to art therapy. We had courses which spoke about, where we discussed the ethics in art therapy. And so approaches and ethics are also things that we talk in psychology. For example, in psychology, we have the different approaches or ways, the different theories of psychology. For example, there is the psychodynamic theory, which is where Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung and these people come into being. And then you have the behaviorist approach and the cognitive approach. So in art therapy, when I have these courses, we would learn about the psychodynamic approach or the behaviorist approach or the cognitive approach, but in the context of art therapy. How do these psychological theories apply in the context of art therapy, or how would you use them in an art therapy session? Or for example, ethics. And that's something that came up even earlier when Sangeeta was talking about using artwork. Just the way that in a therapy session, we would not reveal information that the client has spoken about because there is confidentiality. So the same applies to the artwork that is that is made in the session as well. So I had courses in approaches and theories of art therapy, in ethics. We had different courses where we studied art therapy in different settings. So how would art therapy apply in schools? How would it apply to children? How would it apply in medical settings? And along with the theory work, what was really amazing was that we got to see, we got to witness, and we also got to participate and do a little art therapy, obviously under the guidance of our teachers and instructors. We got to practice and see art therapy in different settings. So we would have settings where there were different NGOs that, in and around Detroit and Michigan, that dealt with different populations, disadvantaged populations, women and children that have, seen abuse or come from violent backgrounds. We also had NGOs where there were youth that were disadvantaged, either youth that were homeless or that identified as LGBTQ. And so there was a wide variety of populations that we got to see art therapy in practice with. And once I finished with my course, I had 700 hours of internship. So 700 hours of internship, I was really fortunate that I got to do it in different settings again. And the first one was medical art therapy. And then could we go to the next slide, please? So I had the opportunity to do medical art therapy where there's the University of Michigan's, they have a cancer center and they also have a pediatric hospital. And I was able to do part of my internship in both those settings. And so at the cancer center, we had an art cart. We just literally had a cart with art supplies. We had some pre-made or pre-decided like simple art projects that could be done, on the spot with, not a lot of effort and not a lot of skill. And I have some of the examples over here. So we had these little boxes that could be made, and inside the boxes, people could put things or words that were special to them. We had mini canvases, we had inspiration journals, we had inspiration or, strength stones. It was nothing but like glass magnets. And on the back, we would just attach a word. Say, for example, the one that I have put here, for example, one is forgiveness, and the other one is nature and nurture. So we would just have cutouts from magazines, and then we would stick that, and then they would choose a word that meant a lot to them. So for a lot of the people in the cancer center, when we would take the art cart and do the rounds, they would add words like family, support, healing. And for them, this was the stone. It was almost like, like how in India we would keep the idol of a god or an image to give us, strength and faith. They would do that, and they would make these little stones, or they would have these inspiration journals, or just small, canvases. So we would have the art cart, and we would go around. And in the pediatric center, again, we would always have the art cart that we would take everywhere. And in the pediatric center, we would, the children were allowed to kind of choose or do whatever it is that they want, whether it was coloring and all, coloring or using clay. But then in the pediatric center, something that was very powerful that I learned about art therapy is that one, it is the process. And then even more important than the process of art therapy where you're making the art, it is the relationship between the art therapist and the client. And the reason I say is because, a very powerful lesson that I learned was I was visiting the dialysis unit where there would be children that would come in every day for dialysis, for kidney dialysis. And there was this one boy that was never interested in making art. He didn't want to color, he didn't want to do anything with clay, nothing. He just wanted to play. And for me, as an intern, I was wondering, I'm like, am I doing the right thing? I'm here to do art therapy, but this child does not want to do anything related to art. But then for me, going there every day, and I would be there every day, and I would play with him, and he would want to play swords or Star Wars and things, and that's what I did. And that's what that child needed. And so the important lesson that I learned at that time was that one, art therapy is about the relationship. Art therapy is also about meeting the client, meeting the person where they're at. And what that child needed through art therapy was play and companionship and presence. And so I learned very powerful lessons during my internship at the University of Michigan Hospital. And then I also had a chance to do geriatric art therapy. So I would visit a home where there were seniors, and many of them had Alzheimer's, dementia, and other disabilities. And we would go there a couple of times a week, and we would do art. And here it was interesting to see how we adapted, art materials and supplies for the seniors. So, for example, we would do a lot of watercolor because for those adult, for the seniors, with their limited physical abilities and also sometimes limited cognitive abilities, all that they could do was just dip a brush into water and paint and just put it on watercolor paper. And again, for them, that was therapeutic. We did not have specific art therapy goals because there were many of them who were in very late stages of Alzheimer's or dementia and very, very old. We had people that were 92, 93 that were making But for them, this was maintaining a certain, the art therapy and making art was maintaining a certain quality of life. And so I had experience in geriatric art therapy. And the next slide, please. And so the previous one. The one before that, sorry. Yeah, so, and then the last part of my internship, I did it at a studio, and that is where I work right now. And it is a community art studio. So we have a place and through grants, we get supplies, and we have a studio full of art supplies, as you can see there. And people can come in. One, we have open studio programs where people can come in, they pay a very nominal fee, and they can come in, they can use any of the supplies that we have, and they can come in to make art. And so it's open to the general public, and we have people of all ages. We have people of all abilities and backgrounds that come into our studio. And so sometimes parents will come in with their children. They'll say, oh, this is a nice place. We brought our child here so that they can make art. And then the parents themselves, they'll, end up alongside the child. They'll start making art themselves. And then it becomes, something that they come back to again and again. So we have people that are always discovering our studios. We have regulars, and then we have people coming in, all the time. And so we do open studio programs. And then we also do artists in residence. And artists in residence, they're mostly adults with disability. And the disabilities range from autism to cerebral palsy to multiple sclerosis, Asperger's. And they come in during specified times, and we facilitate and kind of help them while they're there in the studio. And so we have some of the artists in residence that are pretty independent, and they're able to do their, work on their own. But for some of them, for example, we have one, a young lady who has cerebral palsy. And so she has very limited use of her hands, and she's not able to paint and hold drawing and painting utensils the way that we can. And so this is where I come in, and sometimes I hold her hand as the third hand, and I help her paint. And the painting that you see that looks like a ship on the water, it wasn't intended to be like that as well. So she was having difficulty holding a brush. So we decided that we would use a roller that you would use to paint the walls. And so she would dip the paint, and then, she would hold my hand, and then we would just make these movements. And then out of that, she just knew she wanted a moon, and I helped her do that. But the rest of it was all just, somewhere where she was either rolling the brush, or I was holding her hand, or she was holding my hand. And that was, the outcome of it. And she ended up selling this painting. And then we also have, so we have artists in residence, we have open studio, and then we also have, small art parties where there is something that is more focusing on art making and not just art therapy, where people can come in. For example, this is a picture from a workshop where we did, mandalas and Zentangle art. So we had an event where people register and come, and there's someone, an instructor who will guide you through the process and tell you how to, achieve. And here the focus is a little more on the product. So this community art studio, we are kind of, we are providing art-based therapy, we're providing art therapy, we're providing, even community art. So that is the work that I do right now. And the last slide is something, that I wanted to end on the note with the last slide. So this, for me, because I came into, art therapy without any training in the visual arts. I never painted or drew, growing up. And I did not even really know what art therapy was. But then I think for me, what was really my journey into art therapy, it has been exactly what art therapy is. It is an internal process. And for me, my evolution from, someone that has done a master's in psychology to now becoming an art therapist, it has been very internal. And it was very interesting for me when I was deciding, working on the presentation, that I realized that I had these two masks that I had worked on. And the first mask is the one that I worked on when I started the program. This was maybe in my first 2 months that I started the art therapy program. and the second one is the one towards the end. And for me, the way I look at it is the first one has the makeup, and it is a mask in the real sense. And there is a facade or the image of the Buddha. And in the second one, the paint is stripped off. And for me, I really like working on masks. And I realized that compared to the first mask where I did all of this outside, all the painting and the imagery outside, and inside the inside of the mask really did not have anything. But as I started working on masks, I realized that I was doing more work, like art, on the inside of the mask, and there was less on the outside. And for me, I think this is for people out there who think they're not artists, or for people out there who wondering about what art therapy is and how it can, whether it really helps. I mean, here's proof. So I was someone that came into the field not knowing, and it has definitely transformed me. And art therapy is very internal, and this external mask can, help reveal that. So yeah, thank you so much.
Great, Aishwarya. It was really nice to hear your journey and understanding of art therapy. I hope this entire journey would help our students to understand how depth this subject is and how it is important to learn and then transform oneself from the innermost point, right? So yes, it's time now to take question answer sessions.
Thank you, Aishwarya.
Thank you so much.
It was a great. I got a very different aspect of art with this webinar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I would request Smita ma'am to take questions from students, and then the panel members can answer the questions.
Yes. So there are no questions till now.
Yes, I could see one question from Shreya. Shreya, you can come forward, you can ask question directly.
Shreya.
Okay.
Tushar, you can unmute Shreya so that she can.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I have two questions and they're directed to Sangeeta ma'am. So you talked a lot about the terminology and the importance of the difference in art education and art therapy. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, what is the difference between art therapy and art-based therapy? Yeah.
Very good question, Shreya. And Shreya was also a former WCC student, so thank you for being on this webinar. So yeah, arts-based therapy is more, and Smita can also help me understand. That's a term that seems to be more unique for India, that I have heard of more, and the training at was more with drums and movement and more of the expressive arts therapy is what my understanding is of the Pune program. And art therapy, according to international, that is standards, is more when in the American Art Therapy Association, especially, it's been defined as a master's level training program, because we do work on a clinical setting, a lot of us. So therefore, it's a master's level training program. With art-based program, I don't think there's a master's level requirement that is there. So there is a difference there, but it does get very confusing, the different terminologies that are arising in the world. Yes. Yeah.
So Sangeeta, what you said was right. So there's no master's program here. There's only a few certificate courses. And so basically arts-based therapy is where all art forms are used. Dance, drama, storytelling, visual art, whatever helps you to express is whatever creative processes can be used are used in art-based therapy. So, as Sangeeta said, it's a little confusing, but yes, this is what the understanding is. When you say arts-based therapy, it means that all forms of arts are used.
Yeah.
And here, Saloni wants to ask next question, but then Niharika has typed her question here. She says, my question is open to all the panelists. Nowadays, a lot of healing coloring books are in the market. Does it have the same impact as being in therapy with a therapist?
I can jump in on that. That's a great question. And often when I'm presenting just an overview on art therapy, I have a slide of a coloring book that I found in a local store that says art therapy coloring book. It is therapeutic and it does aid in reducing stress. And so we recommend them to people to use at home. But the major difference is that when you engage in art therapy, you engage in a therapeutic relationship with someone. So when you're doing like coloring in a book, it's really you at home working in a book. But when you're in art therapy, you engage in a relationship with a trained person in art therapy. So that's kind of where the big difference lies. Thank you for that question.
Yeah. So Muskan has a question here. How can art students apply their knowledge to the work to better it further?
Can I get some clarity on that, Muskan? Are you saying that, how can you means, are you coming from a different background or what is, can you clarify?
She is from fine arts. She is doing painting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Muskan, I think she means that how can she better her work using this knowledge of art therapy?
Okay. So I guess one of the things I would suggest is you can get in touch more with your own feelings and thoughts. For instance, if you look at art history, the goal of art history, when you look at the earlier paintings for the churches or the temples, the goal was to be decorative, to convey the religious message out there, right? In advertising, it is more to convey the product that is being advertised. So it depends on what you are trying to work on in your particular art. So if it's for self-expression, or it is to bring out a message, sometimes it is to, like Picasso did in his Guernica, right? He wanted to condemn the war that was going on at that time. So it depends on what message. Definitely you can use self-expression in your art. But I wouldn't call it art therapy. I would call it more self-expression.
I would love to add to this question, maybe it might help, Muskan. Something that, for people that are artists, that are learning, the professional art techniques. Right now on the internet, there's so much information available and there are many prompts. So for example, for artists, if they want to get, not just focus on the product, but have process. So there are things like art journals, like a 30-day art challenge. And for every day, there might be a prompt. Say, for example, today you will look out at nature and look at something that inspires you and draw that. Or something, today, what is it that I feel grateful for? And you use that thought and you kind of bring that image out on paper. So here, I think the artist where there's self-expression, but there's also, using the art as a therapeutic form of expression. So there's a lot of information available online for, having art journals or art for expression and, therapeutic purposes. If that helps.
I would like to jump in here to help Muskan. So this is from the perspective of an artist. So in art therapy, as Aishwarya right now said, that it's self-expression. So self-expression is always truthful. Whatever you are expressing is the truth that's coming out. Similarly, you can do the same thing in your work. You have to be truthful to whatever you feel and do the artwork. That's the thing that I can tell you, Muskan. Yeah. Should I take that?
Visualization. I'd just like to add a suggestion, Muskan. With my experience, visualization really, really helps. Like you sit and visualize first, and then you start projecting on the paper. It will help you, even making your artwork better.
Right. Should I go to the next question?
Yes, ma'am. There is one student, Tanvi Gudepudi is there. She is wanted to ask you one question.
So shouldn't I read out her question? Let her ask the question. Go ahead.
Is it Tanvi Goody Pudi?
Yes.
Tanvi, you can ask your question.
You can unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, Tanvi.
Hi, yes. Good evening, panelists. So, I wanted to know if, so I have a background in graphic design and I'm really interested in art therapy, but I've always been told that you need to have a background in psychology to pursue anything like therapy or art therapy. So is that necessarily true in all cases?
So that's
I'll jump in on that just from my own personal experience and then from my experience in the US, is that the graduate programs in the United States do require some psychology coursework as a prerequisite to the program. But I was like you, I was a fine arts major in my undergraduate training. So I had to take a few courses both before and during my graduate training. But the psychology is important to have that foundation prior to entering the art therapy programs so that you have some knowledge about human development, and emotional disturbance, and some of the categories of psychological problems that people encounter.
Right.
Also say one more thing about that is when we're designing the program at MIT, I'm hoping that we can offer some of the psychology courses within the program so that when I studied fine arts, there was absolutely, and now things are changing in India, there was absolutely no opportunity for me to go and just take a few courses because that's not the way the system was set up at that time. Now with credit system, it's more possible, but still it may not be still possible for a lot of people to get psychology courses. So I'm hoping that's something that, again, when the training is developed, it's developed for the Indian environment, and we can take that also into account. But you will need psychology background. Yes.
There is one question from Muskan.
So I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there was a question I wanted to ask and I just got muted in between. So I'll just finish my second question. So this is directed to Sangeeta ma'am because she brought up this issue, but open to all panelists to answer. So you were talking about certain issues in India that you would like to kind of face or deal with when you develop a course over here. So so far in my course in WCC, I've learned about the importance of providing a safe space and encouraging confidentiality, not just in art therapy, but in any form of therapy. But according to my observation, I feel that in India, people generally don't tend to trust therapy, and they feel that it's not completely like, it will not work out, or they feel that the therapist might backtalk or something like that. So I wanted to ask you, how do you feel this situation could be dealt with and increase system of confidentiality in providing a safe space in an Indian setting? Yeah.
Thank you. Wonderful question. I'll answer it a little bit, and then we have Smita and Manisha who work there, so they can also say how they handle confidentiality. Sure. I work here a lot with the Indian community, and that is sometimes an issue here where we bump into each other because it's such a small community. So yes, confidentiality can be a concern. One of the things in my first session, I tell them that I understand that we are from the same community, and you might wonder if I'm going, what will I say to other people? And I said, that is really up to you if you want to share. But I do not share any information, any artwork, or tell people that you are my client, because in the mental health field, we do keep that confidentiality. So that is for private practice and where I'm working. But if I'm working in a community center at let's say there's a temple and that having, sometimes it's harder to maintain those boundaries. So ethics also depends on the environment that you are working in. So that's also another part that we get training in. So that's one point. And Smita, if you want to jump in. Yeah.
So similarly, we do the same thing. We send them a form before they join the therapy sessions, and they have to sign that they will be, abiding with all these confidential issues. And when they come into the session, we tell them that yes, they can share the learning, but they can't share the stories, taking the name of the client. So, and usually they all abide by those rules or whatever the laws or the things that we tell them. And if we at all have to, use their artwork for anything, we take a written consent from them saying that this is the reason that we want to use their artwork and can we use it. And only after they give their consent, we use the content.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So Saloni has been saying he wants to go next.
Saloni.
Yes, Saloni, you can.
Yes, I can finally. Thank you. I could finally unmute myself now. So good evening, everyone. My question to our honorable panelists is: wouldn't it be great if art therapy would be introduced to people much early in life? Because that way they won't have so many negative emotions or just these emotions bottled up inside them. So they won't necessarily have to resort to art as a therapy.
Yeah, sure. Definitely in the school systems, if we had more of the arts and all that, it would be wonderful. You don't very in an one of the things I have done is worked with kindergarten teachers to make it more therapeutic, the approach. So it's not art therapy, but it's more therapeutic in art classes. If we can do that in educational settings, definitely it would help. But still life has, we all go through suffering sometime in our life, right? And there are circumstances that are very difficult to handle. Sometimes as we are growing, people have psychotic breaks at age 18. They may be normal. Sometimes the pressures in life. So at various stages, we may need the therapeutic intervention in different ways. So that's why very important to get the training in order to provide that support to that person.
Yeah, so can I jump in here and help Saloni a little bit? So what could also be done, as Sangeeta said, that yes, we could take workshops for parents or teachers and make them aware of looking at the art of the child and having a conversation with the child and finding out what is it that's happening with the child. So that also helps. And you can also get the child into this habit of whenever, like the child is not feeling himself, he can, take up a paper and a crayon and start, expressing whatever he feels like. And then maybe he could talk to the parents or the teachers. Yeah. And there is a very good thing that's happening right now. There's a summit going on for the teachers, and they have introduced this topic of how to use art in the classrooms. So yes, people are getting aware of it, and this happens right at the kindergarten level, as Sangeeta said. Yeah.
There is one question from Aditi that she is asking: is use of color happens to be mandatory, or people with who are only interested in black and white drawing indicate something?
I'll just mention real quickly that when we look at artwork, we as trained therapists have a knowledge base to understand maybe the formal elements of what we're seeing. But color is very personal. And so I always defer to the artist, the person that made the art piece, as to what the color means to them. Because black and white can be very strong colors that can convey lots of emotion. If it goes on for a long period of time, that might be something to explore with the person, especially if they have the option of using color. I know one time I worked with an adolescent who only did black paintings when she first started working with me. She did have a diagnosis of depression and suicidal ideation. She eventually moved to gray, and then she eventually moved to color as she improved. But it doesn't always mean that a person is depressed or that it doesn't always mean a certain thing because they just use black and white.
Right. So there's a very interesting story, a little story about this. There was one little guy who used to always use brown in the painting. Every time he would use only brown. So one fine day, the teacher thought that this child has some problem. Let me talk to this child. And the teacher started having conversation with the child, and she asked, why do you always use brown? So the child said, what do I do? This is the only color that is left when the box comes to me.
Yeah.
So we missed out one question by Vaishnavi. She asks, the question is to Aishwarya ma'am, how effective art therapy is compared to other psychotherapies, and if it makes a huge difference in human psyche, the way and why the rehabs are using this, and why not the rehabs are using it.
So I think I will definitely answer this question, but I'm sure that, Susan and Sangeeta, they would be able to answer it better because they have far more experience in terms of, practicing this. I think art therapy, especially when you have the solid foundation of, techniques and theories of psychology, along with your knowledge of, art and art therapy, I think it can, art therapy is a very powerful way because, like what Sangeeta said in the beginning, sometimes, words are not enough. So you're in a counseling, in a talk therapy session, and sometimes you can't bring out what is, extreme trauma that you might have been through, or a very difficult, experience, or really deep, dark emotions. You just can't give words to them. And so in that sense, it's somehow, it is safer and it feels more healing to express in images and, or on clay or on paint. It feels safer and more healing to do that than express through words. That's what I would think. And and another thing, for example, in anxiety, when you talk of traditional, psychological, therapy that you would use, cognitive behavioral therapy is used is considered very powerful for anxiety. But when you bring art therapy into the equation, so that would be where cognitive behavioral therapy, you're really, you're talking you're challenging your irrational thoughts, and you're trying to kind of replace them with more rational ways of thinking. And so in art, how that might translate is that you would do maybe in a session where you're using psychotherapy and art therapy, and you're trying to tackle with anxiety, and you're trying to tackle irrational thoughts, you might use collage and not watercolor. So to say watercolor is something that would allow for Sangeeta and Susan, please, correct me or let me know if I'm because I'm the novice here. You guys are the experts.
No. I think one of the reasons why you need to have a good training and a good foundation in psychology and art, as I said, it's a combination of different fields, right? So your in-depth knowledge in both helps you know how to respond to the client when you're presented with something. So for instance, I can give you an example is when a child draws something, if you were only using it as a therapeutic modality, the art, and saying, oh, it's so calming, it's so nice, it's wonderful, and the child draws something that's very intense, you may not know how to respond to them in that situation. So the training in psychology, either psychoanalytical or whatever training you have, that will give you an understanding of the child's psychology, will help you know how to respond to that child. So that's very important because it is, after all, replacing words. The image is replacing words, and we need to know how to respond to that image. So that's why the training is so important. Yeah.
And let me just add too that I am always learning. I have not learned everything. And so one of the things that both Sangeeta and I do, even after many years of practice, is we pursue supervision with somebody that knows more than we know, or maybe has more experience with a particular type of person that we're working with, so that we are doing what's best for the person that we work with, or the group that we're doing. So supervision is ongoing, and continuing education is part of it. And so we're still learning, and we learn from people like you too, who are new to the field, but learning some of the newer developments that are happening.
Yeah. So there are 15 more questions. Should I go to the next now? So question
we were thinking of making it one of the, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Dr. We can't hear you.
Please, sir, please unmute yourself.
There are many more questions, but looking at the time constraint, we should conclude now. I would request Jyoti ma'am to give her concluding remarks, and then we will wind up. Yes, of course, if required, we will have same kind of session. Once again, I'm really grateful to all the participants having asked these questions, many more questions, and these questions are really very, very, interesting questions to see their enthusiasm and their enthusiasm to know about art therapy. But we will now conclude to this session. So I would request Jyoti ma'am to give a concluding remark.
And just before that,
if you have the questions, if you want to, means sometimes the same questions on the repeated this thing. If you want to take few more questions, you can. Otherwise, it's already more than 2 hours. So that's why I asked if you are all are too busy, because students continuously asking questions, and you can continue for 5-10 minutes. I don't have any problem.
I have a meeting also to go to. So
yeah, that's what I'm, because it's whatever the time concern was 1 hour and 1.5 hours, but now it's almost more than 2 hours. So we will conduct this kind of webinar next semester as well, if Dr. Milind wants to.
Sure, definitely.
Indeed, all experts like Miss Manisha, Miss Smita, Sangeeta ma'am, and Suzanne ma'am, Aishwarya, all of your our webinar is quite successful. Like a lot of questions and many more. Now we will tell you the viewer what was the number of viewership. We will definitely tell you, and indeed some new thing like this art therapy. I'm also new to this kind of new subjects and everything, but definitely if I want to mentor this fine arts, so that's why I attended the full webinar, and because the subject understand the new subjects is a good thing. Thank you very much. And hope stay home. I don't know the situation in US. I think everything is open now, but still we have to be careful with this corona thing, and everybody be at home and be safe. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jyoti ma'am, and thank you, Dr. Milan, for hosting this. We really appreciate the opportunity that you all have given us to answer questions and bring about awareness in art therapy. We have put in, we created a small new email address for questions. So it is art therapy, we have put it in the chat, arttherapymit@gmail.com. So people can write their questions and we will try to answer.
Great thing.
Yeah, I have also copied all the questions so that if you want to answer those later, we can always answer those later.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. And we wish all of you all the very best. And we hope some of you all will become art therapists in the future and bring a lot of joy to people through the arts. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. With the blessings of Honorable Founder President, Professor Dr. V.D. Karar sir, and continuous support of our beloved Executive President, Professor Dr. Mangesh Karar sir, it was really a successful program, and it was possible to conduct such kind of program on this platform. I'm really thankful to them, and I'm thankful to our Executive Director, Professor Mrs. Jyoti Dakne Madam, who is always supporting and motivating us for such a program. I'm thankful to all the panel members, Sangeeta Prasad, Susan Anand, Smita ma'am, Manisha Khanna, Aishwarya Iyer, who have spared their valuable time and shared their knowledge and views on art therapy. I'm thankful to all my faculty members, faculty colleagues, technical team, and media team for making this event successful. Last but not least, I'm really thankful to all participants who have taken part in this wonderful session and discussion on art therapy. And all my students, I'm really thankful to you. And I declare this program, this session is concluded over here. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, after vote of thank, nobody should talk, but I must invite all of you on our campus and do visit whenever you visit India. Do visit our campus and you will get mesmerized, and that will be a memorable visit to India. I assure you that. I think Smita Deshpande ma'am have visited our campus, and for all kind of therapies, you can say our campus is a perfect place. And you have seen the top view in the beginning, but definitely the all views of our campus are like, that's our Dr. Karad's vision, and what he have created, you must come and visit. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll also take the opportunity, Jyoti ma'am, to tell them that it's a beautiful campus right beside the river, and all green and beautiful buildings and beautiful sculptures installed everywhere. You must visit. Yes, they will.
That is all. Each and every inch of 120 acres is designed by Dr. Karad sir. His vision, like all campuses of MIT, like is almost 1 crore square feet construction is done by our institute, and all campuses are designed by him. And his vision is something different, and is God blessed. Yes,
in fact, I'll share here, Jyoti ma'am. In fact, I also saw your campus. Means I was offered the job of an art educator by Vishwa Shanti Gurukul in 2012. But I couldn't take up that job that time. I
that's great. The world is very small. World is very small.
So I saw Vishwa Shanti Gurukul, of course, on the website only, and I was quite impressed. I said, oh, it would be so lovely to be there.
Yeah, it is awarded the best campus of India.
Yes.
Wow. Yes.
It is awarded by SOCHM as best campus of Indian private universities. Yes.
You must visit the Dome and Sangeet Academy, Raj Memorial, each and everything, and our main campus at Kothurud. That is also a very big campus. Do visit. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. This is the last. This is last request to all the panel members. Please switch on their cameras so that we can have a group photograph. Tushar, can we do that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you to all the participants who came.
All the participants who are there on screen, please switch on their cameras, and then we will have group photograph.
Okay, so smile, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Should I end the meeting, sir?
Thank you. Thank you, Tushar.
Thank you,
Tushar.
Thank you, Tushar sir. Thank you, Milind sir. It was a wonderful seminar.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, and ending the meeting.